We bond over our shared love of Beverly Hills 90210 and the Holocaust, which are our favorite topics.
Our two main passions.
Yeah, very passionate. And anti-Semitic. And we like to critique anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I could talk about Auschwitz and Jason Priestley ad nauseum. So
we should write like a fan fiction of Beverly Hills 90210 at Auschwitz.
God.
That would be good.
Oh God.
They would not have been able to survive.
No,
Donna,
well, maybe,
3 days.
I don't know. I feel like Brenda would be able to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kelly,
yeah, she could have.
Donna, forget.
Kelly, no way. No.
Steve
Donna,
would go,
3 days.
Steve would go be like a camp guard, like one of the Jewish.
Steve would like turn on everyone. Yeah.
Oh, what about Andrea? We forgot about Andrea. She'll be like the spiritual leader.
This is Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you are welcome. You know the drill. Please subscribe, rate, comment, share, reach out, tell your friends, send smoke signals, whatever. We love your feedback and we want to hear from you. If you like our work and want to support us, the best way to do that is join Phetasy.com. You'll get access to behind-the-scenes content, outtakes, discounts on merch, and the ability to submit questions for some of our upcoming guests. Support your favorite scrappy little internet heroes at Phetasy.com. All right, everybody. I'm with Yael Tur and ChayaLeah Sufrin from the podcast Ask a Jew. Welcome to Walk-Ins Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having us.
Yeah, we're big
I'm
fans.
excited. I'm excited to talk to you, too, about all the things. And I probably will be asking a lot of questions since now I have you on here. My first question is, sometimes I get tripped up over when I can say Jew. Like sometimes I'll be like... because I feel like anytime I say it, it's a slur, even though I know that's not the case. I know that might seem funny to you, but it is like sometimes I'll be like, oh, he's, it's like I never know. Even saying your podcast name, I'm like, am I going to get canceled for saying that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to send the ADL to you.
Exactly. It is a weird word because it's basically how you pronounce it. Are you like, oh, she's a Jew? Or it's like, oh, she's a Jew.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, where is the emphasis on the
what do they call
word?
It? Like the euphemism treadmill or something, or the slur treadmill? Like when I was growing up, it wasn't a slur, but now I can't even keep track anymore. So
I know.
So you actually don't really have an answer to my first question.
No,
it's really just how you say
you absolutely can say Jew. I'm a very, very proud Jew, and I am happy to use that word, and I don't even understand for a second why anyone has a problem with it. We're Jewish. I'm a Jew. I practice Judaism. I'll take all of the names, all of the labels.
Yeah, so and if somebody comes after you, we'll do like a Twitter thread or something.
Exactly.
You two started your podcast when?
Oh boy, it feels like 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
No, it was like it was like 2 years ago, basically.
COVID, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
During COVID, yeah.
And what inspired you to start it?
So we met through a podcast. I'm so embarrassed to tell this story, but whatever. It's funny.
We met on Tinder.
We met through another podcast, and during COVID, when everyone was bored at home, we were like doing the Zoom things and whatever. And one day Yael saw me on a Zoom call, and she's like, why is there someone named ChayaLeah on this Zoom call? It doesn't make sense. And so we started chatting, and we were having these really good conversations, and people kept saying, oh, you guys should start a podcast. And we were like, oh, okay, we'll be, yeah, let's do it. And literally that's what happened. And we come from very different backgrounds. So our conversations were rich and interesting, and people were like, seemed to care about what we were saying. And so we went for it.
We're like the same age, but very, very different like lifestyles.
Yeah. Explain to me a little bit about each one of your different backgrounds.
So I grew up in Israel, which means if you're a secular Jew in Israel, you're very secular. So there's something about just growing up there that you're like, I live there already. Like I speak the language already. I don't really need to do anything else. So I didn't really know any religious traditions and customs, and I don't really know any now. And I never really had any Orthodox friends. I had one in grad school.
Are there a lot of secular Jews in Israel?
Yeah, yeah.
What's the ratio?
I don't know what the ratio is, but I would say the majority of
Majority.
Jews aren't Orthodox in Israel.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
the secular part is very secular. So if you go to Tel Aviv, it's like super, super gay, very like a lot of people compare it to Berlin, like very like coffee
Yeah.
shops and bars and everything's open on Shabbat and you know, very, very modern. Jerusalem, more like you would think, like traditional Jewish.
I heard this recently too, like in Tel Aviv, that gender stuff is kind of all the like gender stuff is happening even over there, which was shocking to me.
Well,
But it's,
yeah, I always say we're 10 years behind on all the trends. So I think
yeah.
wokeness has just arrived to Israel.
Oh,
Not just,
interesting.
but they've started doing things with like gender because the language is gendered in Israel in Hebrew. But now they're starting to be offended by things that we were offended by here in 2020, and I feel like we're just kind of getting over it now.
Right.
But
Yeah.
they're discovering it in Israel.
Is there the kind of like anti-Palestine feeling as well in the wokeness? Or not anti, I mean like pro, the anti-Israel sentiment, I guess, that it seems to exist in the left-wing
Yeah,
wokeness.
I think the biggest problem in Israel right now is actually between secular Jews and religious Jews, and between right wing and left wing, which ChayaLeah and I hope to take advantage of to grow our podcast. But you know, there are a lot of I don't know if you heard, but over the last year there have been huge protests in
I
Israel
have
over
heard.
judicial overhaul or reform or whatever you want to call it, and a very right wing government, and it's really been brought these tensions to a boil that are more between the secular, more left leaning, uh, more liberal, but like not liberal as you would think in America necessarily. Like in Israel, the IDF, the army, is considered liberal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Between them and the more kind of religious right wing, more extreme parts of the right.
Okay.
And we're too
Interesting.
busy hating each other right now to focus on hating Palestinians.
Okay, got it.
That's true.
And ChayaLeah, what about you? What's your backstory?
So I was born and raised in a very Hasidic, religious, Orthodox family. Some people would call it ultra Orthodox. Some people hate that name, whatever. I don't really care. And so I grew up, going to only Jewish schools
In
and
America or
yeah, I grew up
okay.
in Southern California. Yeah, in
Okay.
Long Beach. My father's a rabbi
Okay.
in a community here in Long Beach, and but I have very strong ties to the East Coast. I spent all my summers, lots of holidays, all my I have a huge family. Everybody lives in Brooklyn and Montreal, and so really grew up within the Orthodox world. But also live like in California, so I was exposed to like the real world and the regular, culture, but kind of in a very limited way. But I was always very fascinated by pop culture and kind of, dipped my toes in on my own as a teenager, started listening to music, because we didn't have any of that in the home I grew up in. We only listened to like Hasidic music and watched Jewish movies. And, we were not like, we didn't have the Hollywood exposure at all. And I kind of snuck around watching 90210 and,
Oh, wow.
We bonded over
Yeah.
90210. Tell her about how you watched 90210 because it's my favorite story.
Yeah. Well, my friends would like tape it on, VHSs, and I would like go over to their houses for sleepovers and watch it. But then my parents would go out once a week on like a date night. I was the oldest of 6 kids, and we had a monitor, which was like a video machine. I don't know if you remember that, but if you stuck a pin in the back of the monitor, you could get, some channels.
Yeah.
And so I would pay my brother Maishi to hold a hanger or a pin inside the back so that I could watch TV when my parents went out. It was like it was a scheme, but whatever. So I grew up that way, and then I got married, we get married really young. I had 4 kids in my 20s, work in the Jewish community. I'm a Jewish community professional. And so Yael and I just come from very different parts of the Jewish community. I'm definitely from the more ultra Orthodox, right-leaning, part of the Jewish world. But my friends and my professional life are in the left-leaning, more secular part of the Jewish community. So it was just fun meeting and becoming really, really good friends.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, like in your conversations, coming from that very different background, yet still bonded by Judaism, and it is like a crazy spectrum on I mean, like any religion, I think people have this idea that you have to, like most Christians, I think they've done studies like they're basically like holiday churchgoers. They're not going every week,
Yeah.
and it's just like a massive spectrum, but it does seem like more people just assume it's all like the same,
Yeah.
like
mean,
everyone
yeah.
practicing Judaism or everybody who's Jewish is like, they're all Orthodox.
Yeah.
I kind of assumed
Yael and I
like
could
the
not,
Jews.
Yael and I could not be more different in the way that we think about our Judaism. I mean, and it's funny because both of us, I think our Jewish identity is so central to who we are. And it's such a core part of who we are. And yet we come at it from such different places. Yael is definitely more of the Israeli, very, very passionate about her, national pride and being an Israeli, and like the Holocaust and sort of the Jewish history of it. And, I come from a part of a community where like, what we eat every single day makes a difference, and how we behave on the holidays and on Shabbat. And, I cover my hair and, like all of these things. I mean, my Judaism is so much more ritualistic on a daily basis. And so it's really fascinating. And yet I can't say that I'm more Jewish than Yael by any means.
I was going to
really?
ask.
I say that all the time.
Who's more Jewish?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, yeah, but I really don't feel comfortable saying that, because we may express it differently, but like your Judaism, saying this to you, like your Judaism is so central to you. How can I say that I'm less Jewish? You're less Jewish than me, or I'm less Jewish than you.
When I think of my identity, if you ever played one of those games where you're like, what are your core identities, whatever, like I don't think of Jewish as a core one.
You
Like,
don't?
No, but I think of Israeli as first, even though
Oh God, I hate when you say that.
Well, but that's the thing. I'm still Jewish. Like, you still have me. Like, as we like to say on
Yeah, but
the show.
what does that mean?
To me, my Israeliness is like the center of how I relate to the world, right? So even like my mannerisms, I think sometimes are a little more Middle Eastern than they are like American Jewish. And obviously being Israeli has a lot to do with Judaism, but if I met like an Israeli tomorrow who's Christian or Muslim, and we kind of had the same upbringing, I feel like I would maybe feel more in common with them than with like a random Jew from Long Island,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
See, I don't feel that way.
You don't feel that way about me. But
No.
we bond over our shared love of Beverly Hills 90210 and the Holocaust, which are our two favorite topics.
Our two main passions.
Yeah, very passionate. And anti-Semitism. And we like to critique anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I could talk about Auschwitz and Jason Priestley ad nauseum. So
we should write like a fan fiction of Beverly Hills 90210 at Auschwitz.
God.
That would be good.
Oh God.
They would not have been able to survive.
No,
Donna,
maybe,
3 days.
I don't know. I feel like Brenda would be able to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kelly.
Yeah, she could have.
Donna, forget.
Kelly, no way. No. Donna, 3 days.
Steve would go be like a camp guard, like one of the Jewish.
Steve would like turn on everyone. Yeah.
Oh, what about Andrea? We forgot about Andrea. She'll be like the spiritual leader.
That's really funny. I grew up watching that show too. And we moved to Minnesota, and my brother, and everybody was like, are you guys like 90210? Because it's.
Yeah, they came from there.
Yeah.
Brandon and Brenda moved. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed how well I know the show. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll probably.
We're like their parents' age now.
We are.
I know. We are.
Oh, God.
It's funny. I've always wanted to go to Israel, and that's interesting but I guess it makes sense because like it's not you grew up ChayaLeah with American culture. So I mean, I guess if you grow up with like Israeli culture and the foods and the things, you would relate more to somebody who grew up with that similar experience.
Yeah, serving in the military is a big part of our identity too. It's kind of
yeah.
like village. And the culture, the music, the heat, it's such a small country. It's the size of New Jersey.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on. And I told this story in our previous podcast episode, but I had dinner with some friends a few nights ago at an Israeli restaurant, and we had it was like a few American friends, and there was one Palestinian guy who I didn't know too well, but I'd met him before, and we were ordering food, and it was like a hummus restaurant. And all my wonderful friends who I adore, but they were kind of idiots at the moment because they all ordered like an appetizer and a main course instead of doing what you're supposed to do, which is sharing.
Right.
And so me and this Palestinian guy look at each other, and we don't even know each other that well. We're like, "Do you want to share?" Because like normal people, and he's like, "Sure." So, even things like food and I don't know, talk, music.
What do you think about guns?
It's interesting. In Israel, it's not that there's no strong feeling about them one way or the other. People serve in the military; they have them, and
does everyone have one because they serve in the military, or do you have to like turn? What are the gun laws in Israel?
They're actually very strict. They're very strict. A lot of people have them because a lot of people work in some security capacity. So you'll see a lot of times in Israel, there'll be a terrorist attack, and the terrorists will be neutralized by somebody in the vicinity. But it's never just a hobbyist with a gun. It's usually like an off-duty something
like
or other.
A good guy with a gun.
Yeah, but
there's not really a gun culture there of like people collecting guns and trading guns. Like that's not really a thing in Israel.
Do you have to like turn your gun in when you're done being in the military?
Yeah.
It's usually I didn't carry one throughout my service, just here and there. But if you do carry throughout your whole service, you definitely want to turn it in because it's probably like a rifle, like a big rifle.
It's interesting because when you're there, you do see a lot more guns than you'd see here because people, like you could be out for dinner and like at the table next to you, there's sometimes a girl or a guy wearing like an Uzi over their shoulder, because they're either on duty or off, whatever, they have to carry their guns with them. So you see more guns, but it's very different than the American gun culture.
Well, unless you're like in Texas, where you see where people can kind of like open carry. So it just I think it depends on what state you're in. Although most people aren't walking around with their rifles all the time. So I think you do. Even in Texas, I actually don't see. I think most people conceal carry. In the Orthodox culture, what's the feeling about guns?
I mean, I think when I was growing up, it was very uncommon for people to have guns, and it's just not really like part of the Orthodox culture, but things have definitely changed. I think since 9/11, it's been much different. People take security much more seriously, and after like all the shootings and all the things happening in Europe and kind of just the whole change of sort of the atmosphere around terrorism and even domestic terrorism in general, synagogues, Orthodox synagogues are all like secured with armed guards and people within the synagogues carrying. We have like it's really amazing. There's an amazing organization in LA called Magen Am, which is like all volunteer based, and it's all community members who take so much of their own personal time. They go get trained, they get weapon trained. They are completely like given over to security for the community, and they take turns on Shabbat, monitoring the synagogue, guarding outside. They're in full dress, like in, I don't know, combat gear, it looks like, and they take on the responsibility of protecting the community. I mean, when you have 100 kids at synagogue on Shabbat, you're not waiting for 911 to show up if somebody comes in with a gun. So it's a bit of a controversial thing because I think like the more liberal parts of the Jewish world are struggling with this more because they're pretty much, anti-gun and they don't like the idea of armed guards and whatever. The Orthodox world is the opposite. They are very happy to have security at all Jewish institutions and make sure that people are checked properly when they come in and vetted, and they take it seriously.
This was something interesting I was listening to in one of your recent podcasts, just how this, I can't remember his name. It was a hard to pronounce name, but it was the crypto Jew episode.
Oh yeah.
And he was talking about growing up and defending himself against people who might be anti-Semitic, and then having somebody pull him aside and say, "Oh, that's like you can't sink to like the goyim. That's like only they get to be violent, I guess. And
Yeah.
that was really interesting to me thinking about that. Like, what are you supposed to do? Like if you can't just like roll over and take it.
Of course. No, the Orthodox world won't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there are parts of the Jewish world that wish that we would, but after like the Crown Heights riots in the early 90s and, the Orthodox communities in Brooklyn and all over, actually all over the country have, their own police guards and their own like volunteer and hired. They have their own ambulance services. They really take care of their needs because at the end of the day, like I don't know, maybe it's trauma from the Holocaust, maybe it's trauma from just we're like the Jews of the Jews, as they say. We're like the minority of the minority. And so maybe there's just a sense of like, we have to really take care of ourselves and not rely on anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it's a big part of our culture.
Interesting. And are the women allowed to kind of arm themselves?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because women, obviously we're very patriarchal. I mean, and I say that not in like I know that sounds
not in like
weird
a feminist
to say,
way.
not in a, yeah, I'm not saying it like, oh my God, we're in such a patriarchy. Sorry. But we're a very genderized community. And so, yeah, definitely women in the past didn't. But now there's like a big group of women who are getting trained and carrying weapons with them and doing like shifts on, guard duty. And yeah, so women are much more involved in it now.
Yeah, it's really interesting too. Like I've been thinking so much about guns and gun culture and it just being in Texas versus being in California and growing up very liberal and being kind of indoctrinated to be afraid of guns and not really grow up with them in the home and actually parents who are quite anti just having my own personal evolution, I guess, around it, where I'm like, this seems like a pretty cool thing to be able to like level the playing field in a situation where I don't have a physical advantage as a woman. But I never really knew that it was pretty strict in Israel, although that would probably make some sense.
Yeah, it's not a cultural issue like it is here. Like I don't think people feel strongly one way or the other about it. I think it's a uniquely American thing, the Second Amendment. I don't know. I can't speak for other countries, but I doubt that other countries have like a significant, like strong feelings. Like we have strong feelings about abortion in Israel, like people do here. But guns, and I don't know. I never really heard people very passionate about them one way or the other.
Yeah, it's funny. And my European friends are all like, you guys are so weird about abortion. Like your strong feelings about abortion. They're like, we're pretty chill about it in Europe. They seem to kind of have it. They've reached some compromise that everyone seems to be somewhat okay with. It's not like it's just not like a culture war flashpoint here.
Yeah.
Well, we've kind of let the Christian right, take over the conversation around abortion. I mean, in all reality, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's sort of who leads the conversation around abortion. And I don't think they let that in Europe or in Israel, really.
Interesting.
It's different. Yeah.
What's in Israel? Who's the controversy between around abortion?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's like a day-to-day thing that people talk about that much, but when it does come up, I think you have to go through a committee
to get one.
Yeah, but I don't think, and I might be wrong. I hope you won't get angry emails, but I don't think it's.
I will get angry emails no matter what.
Regardless, I don't think it's something that people are really like. They don't get denied, for religious reasons. Like people can get abortions.
Because Judaism and Christianity don't view abortion in the same way, so it's different in Israel than it would be here.
How does Judaism view it?
According to Jewish law, if the mother's life is in danger or if the baby is not viable, abortion is absolutely allowed. The baby does not take precedent over the mother at all, because it's not really a life according to Jewish law until it's born. So it's like a complicated, but that doesn't mean that Judaism wants it to be a form of birth control. That's not allowed. So it's very circumstantial and it would depend on the situation. So again, like if a mother's life is in danger for health reasons, and that means it could be emotionally, mentally, physically.
Yeah, you can get an elective abortion. 100%.
Okay.
But not just, but that you would go, I mean, according to Jewish law, I'm not saying what people do, but I'm saying according to Jewish law, you would ask your rabbi, and your rabbi would say, if your doctor thinks that you need to have an abortion, absolutely go ahead and have an abortion. So it's different than the Christian.
Yeah, but the rabbis, I mean, it's important to say, like, the rabbis are not involved in the decision making in Israel for the abortion.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like completely, the state is,
Yeah.
The state institutions are independent.
Coming from Israel, what do you miss the most about the culture?
Wow, the food.
I miss the food, and I've never been to Israel.
We have to take you. We have to take you on our next trip.
I'm dying to go. My husband and I have been wanting to go for so long because we have Jewish souls, I think.
Yeah, we'll take you. I took a few people on a trip last year that. I think some of them. And
was that like time. Melissa Chen and all of them? Yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm dying to go. I will take my daughter. I don't care. I want it.
ChayaLeah, we need to get on it. But it was so much fun last time, and experiencing it. I love experiencing Israel through the eyes of people who have never been before.
Yeah.
I think, it's good and bad, because when I come to Israel, it drives me crazy sometimes how direct and open everybody is. And kind of like very, very in your face. And I still sometimes, even living here since 2007 and working in, American institutions, I feel like I still sometimes like have a hard time with the like, hello, I hope this email finds you well kind of nature of communications. I miss that. And then, Israel is very, like, Israelis always ask why. There's a great book called Startup Nation by Dan Center. That talks about why Israel became a startup, hub. And he says a lot of it is because the culture is very informal. Like, you call your teacher by their first name. You call your commander in the army by their first name.
Wow.
Somebody asks you, your boss asks you to do something, you ask him why. And if you think it's a stupid idea, you tell them, I think your idea is stupid.
Wow.
So
it's not like hierarchical in some sense.
No, very. I mean, it's not completely anarchy, but like it's not hierarchical. Like if you work for like a minister or something, you call them by their first name.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Why
lends
is
itself
that?
very well. I think we're just an informal culture. Like I think the culture is such a melting pot and melting pot still isn't like a bad word in Israel. But you have... It
will be in 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Soon enough. 50%, maybe like half of the population is Eastern European Jews like myself, whose family came from Poland, Germany, Austria, whatever. And the other half are Sephardic Jews who are kind of, from Arab descent. So Iraq, Iran, Morocco, Libya. And it's just created like this hodgepodge of a culture that's, I don't know, I enjoy it most of the time.
I have a new Israeli staff member, and I took him out the other day, and he just arrived in America, and he is so Israeli. And I was like, you need to calm down. Like, we walked into a coffee shop, and like the server, who was like a male, wearing nail polish, like, he was an interesting guy. He was like serving someone else. And my staff person is like, and my friend, he's screaming across the room. Yeah. Can I smoke in here? And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, you need to like tone it down, calm down, wait till he's done. Like, we don't rush. We're especially in Southern California, like just let the person finish, and then you can ask your questions. I mean, I took him to the bank to open an account. I'm like, oh, shut up. Like, he just was asking a million questions a minute. The poor teller was like looking at me. I'm like, I'm sorry, he's not from here. Like,
fresh off the boat.
Yeah.
When I was in Sri Lanka, I was told to tell all of the vendors that I was Israeli. There were tons of Israelis because they said they would basically like wear them down and waste so much of their time. Not to reinforce any negative stereotypes.
No, it's 100% true.
None.
They were such a pain in the ass. They would just basically give them whatever like their bargain was because they knew they would lose 5 customers trying to go back and forth with an Israeli.
Sometimes stereotypes are based on truth,
but honestly, that's one of my worst stereotypes though, because like I cannot handle bargaining with people. Like if they say it's 20, I'm like, let me give you 30. Like I can't. I'm so so American in that way. I'm so uncomfortable. And when I go to Israel, and I go to Israel a lot, and like we spend time in the shuk over there, where it's just like where you can bargain. And I cannot stand next to somebody who's bargaining. Like, it's so uncomfortable for me. I crawl out of my skin.
Yeah.
Just pay. I can't. Oh.
Yeah, I was
Jewish.
in like a negotiation, and it was with an Israeli, and he was like, I have to say, you negotiate like you're Israeli. And I was like, I take that as a compliment.
I think that's a compliment.
He's like, you're a pain in the ass.
I'm the worst. I'm not good at that.
So I have a friend in my virtual like mommy chat that has saved my life over the past few years. During pregnancy, it started, and she moved to Israel with her 2 kids, and she's constantly talking about just how different the like even mommy culture is over there versus coming from America, and how challenging it could be, but just like how straightforward or aggressive like some of the it came across, but now she's embraced it fully.
Everybody's in everybody's business in Israel, too.
That's what she said.
So I'm sure people come up to her all the time and comment about what her baby
all
is
the time
wearing, and the stroller is not good for him.
And they're not behaving the right way. And
But I'll tell you something. That was one thing that I was very jealous of. I really wish I would have raised my kids in Israel. It's so much easier in a sense than raising kids here. Like, I have 4 sons, and they were born in 7 years. So I had like 4 little boys, and I would go to Israel and see, little 8-year-old boys walking their younger brothers to the ice cream store and going around and doing errands for their moms and picking up cleaners. Like,
you'd be arrested.
Such a more here. I mean, literally, you cannot do anything here. It's like it's the worst place, I think, to raise kids at this moment.
Yeah, we were very free range.
It's so much easier in Israel.
I've heard that, and I was just out on this visiting like a ranch this past weekend, and all these people grew up in Texas, and they were telling these stories, and they're older. They were telling these stories about how when they were kids, they would hop fences, and they were they were boys, and they would go like 7 years old, and they would go for like 3 days and camp and find their own food and skin it and hunt it. I was like, what happened? This wasn't that long ago. Now you can't. If you let your 7-year-old do that, your kid would be taken away from you.
I know.
It's so wild.
Terrible.
There's also like, we take on a lot of responsibility at a young age. A lot of kids in Israel are involved in like youth movements. So my nieces are they're all like 3 of them. They're like 15 and 16. They're twins that are 16 and or 17 maybe. I don't know. Anyway, they're all like already leading groups of children. Leading like 4th and 5th graders, and going like when we went to summer camp in Israel, it wasn't like with cabins and stuff. They just throw a bunch of you in the middle of the woods and be like, go build like shelter. So again, I don't want to romanticize it too much, because there's I read like Babysitters Club books growing up, and I was like jealous of their summer camps.
Yeah.
Where people didn't like get dysentery and heat stroke. But I'm sure there's an advantage to growing up that way too.
No, but it only works in societies where people take responsibility for people, even if they don't know them, right? And that's like, if you've ever read Sebastian Junger's book Tribe, that's like his whole idea is like, we need to, in America, we don't take responsibility for each other. If you see somebody do something going wrong for someone, usually what do? You walk away, right? Don't ask questions, don't get involved. He's like, that is such a low trust society. And you can't raise kids if people aren't going to be like, oh, I recognize that kid from a few blocks down. Let me make sure he's okay. And that's what it's like in Israel. Or, I mean, we have that in the Orthodox community. I mean, everybody's too much in your business. Yeah. But in a way, it's safer. Like, your kids can be out there. And I know my son was in Zurich by himself for a full day on a layover, and he didn't know whatever. He Googled a kosher restaurant. He took an Uber there from the airport. It didn't exist. And he was like stuck in the middle of Zurich, and he didn't have food. And then he noticed like an Orthodox Jewish woman walking. And so he went over to her and he told her the story, and she put him in her car right away, drove him to the Jewish neighborhood, got him food. That's a kind of like trust that you have when you're in like an in-group. Yeah. And it's just easier to raise kids that way, Not
to get too morbid, but in Israel, when there's when there's a terrorist attack, which happens pretty often, I think there's a rule, or I don't know if it's written or unwritten, that anybody can come into the crime scene and help. So, you know, if you have medical experience, if you take, or to take people in your personal cars to the hospital. And I think I read that other European countries have started doing that too.
Oh, wow.
Just because there's a lot of like red tape busting, I guess,
Right.
when you live in societies like these.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been watching kind of obsessively. My daughter's obsessed with it. We were watching it when I was pregnant, but now she's become obsessed with this documentary, Becoming You, and it's on Apple TV, and it follows 100 kids around the world for the first 2,000 days of their.
Wow.
I heard about it from the woman, Skenazy.
Lenore
Skenazy. So she told me about it when she was on the podcast, and now we're like addicted because she talked about in Japan, a high trust society, they have this idea of the first errand, and you send your 3-year-old out to do an errand by themselves. And then there was this little girl, and she's 3 years old, and her parents are out fishing, and they live in the Banju tribe. They live on stilts outside of in like the South Pacific, and she just like jumps in the water and swims over to her friends, and she doesn't even she's never swam before, but they're like, come play with us. And the narrator's like, this, you know, this might seem strange if you're viewing this from the West, but this is actually quite common. And there was like a 4-year-old, and he was just cruising around in his canoe trying to open a coconut, but just on the open ocean at 4 years old. And
it's amazing.
Even talking to these people at the ranch, just thinking about how much we underestimate our kids and, you know, coddle them in this society but from what my friend in Israel says in this mommy chat, it's not the case at all. It does seem like the kids have a lot more freedom and responsibility, and we grew up pretty free range. I'm the oldest of 5, so I think when you're like your own little tribe, you just start naturally kind of watching out. I still do it on the beach to this day, where all my cousins have kids, and there will be kids, and I'll notice that I'm like counting heads all the time. I'm like,
I do that.
I'm being the freaking oldest.
I do. Same. I have the same issue.
I was a kid that would get lost, and somebody else would have to like find.
No.
Yeah.
My younger siblings don't have this. They're like, oh, Bridget, you're so neurotic. I'm like, I was counting your motherfucking heads.
That's right.
So you weren't drowning on the beach my whole childhood.
Same. I'm the oldest of my family, and I'm the exact same way. And I view all my nieces and nephews like my grandchildren. I don't know. I'm like constantly watching them and nervous about them. And I know we can't help it. We just can't.
What is, so Yael, you don't have children, right?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So what have you guys kind of learned from each other in that like parallel universe that you each occupy?
I don't know, ChayaLeah, what have you learned from me?
You know, I think, oh boy, this is a landmine. I don't want to step on a landmine here.
ChayaLeah wants everybody to get married and have kids.
I do.
I mean,
I'm a big believer in that.
I'm kind of, it's funny because I feel like I've gone from being more like, I've like transitioned. Did you guys see this like woman who went viral for saying that she like was napping, and now the whole internet's bullying her, but she went viral and she's like, I'm gonna learn how to make shakshuka, and I'm good because I can, and I'm gonna nap.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll be completely honest, and I think we've spoken about a little bit on our show. Like you know, in a different world, you know, if I had met somebody earlier and settled down, I think I would have had a family, you know, but whatever shape it takes at this point in my life, I'll be happy with it. I know I have some girlfriends who are very much like adamant that they don't want kids. And I have some girlfriends who are really wish that they had kids and are really trying to actively work towards that. And I have a lot of girlfriends like me who are just like, you know, it would have been nice if this would have happened, but not something that we'd like, if we wanted to settle, like not settle down, but settle and just like meet somebody and get married and have babies, we would have done that a long time ago. So it's kind of like a bit more Zen approach to that. Like whatever happens at this point.
So I think this is similar to what I always said. I didn't necessarily want kids. I wanted a family. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of talk, and particularly the manosphere, but online in general, where it's like, sure, feminism has its problems in undermining kind of male-female relations, but I feel like a lot of the blame gets put on women and not necessarily just the lack of high quality men that are out there available. So a lot of these guys will be like, women need to, like, the birth rate's collapsing, women need to be out there getting
Yeah.
knocked up, and like, okay, well, don't be a soft fingered douchebag who just like sits online and bitches all day. Maybe
Yeah.
encourage men to go be
Maybe be more bangable, so women would bang you.
maybe it's so hard. Like, holy shit, the dating world. I should like get paid to be a consultant, but my girlfriends will text me and be like, "What do I do with this guy?" And I don't even. They cannot read between the lines. You know, I dated so many assholes that I am like fluent in douchebag, and they'll be sending me like their interactions and I'm like, do you want like the honest truth about what this guy is like, or do you want like the thing you want to hang on to because you want to hang on to hope? Because
what was that book? He's just not that into you.
yeah, but it's even worse than that now. Now it's like men do have it so easy. They don't even have to like try to court a woman because there's so many options, and it's but I don't think it's actually good for either of the.
I mean, my hot take on dating is that I think there are a lot of good guys out there and good women, and I think sometimes there's like a mismatch. And I'll say for myself, like, and in my past when I was dating, I was more like, I would meet a lot of great guys that I wasn't necessarily interested in, and I couldn't blame them, and vice versa. I met a lot of assholes too. So it's hard, but I definitely encourage my girl. I have girlfriends who have just given up dating altogether, and that's kind of not sad because it's their choice. But I'm like, why? All you need is one. I have a really good friend of mine who's just got engaged, and she was on Bumble forever and ever and ever, and went on a million dates, and then finally went on like that first last date.
Oh,
I just come from such a different.
The way you said that was so like.
Yeah. Well, she's very happy. So
It's just funny the way you said that. You're like, that first last date. We lost one.
I come from such a different world. I mean, we get married very young. We're set up, arranged. Like, I don't like the word arranged marriages because we do have a choice if we want to marry the person. But the whole idea of like family and romance and love and intimacy is just so different than the way that our culture talks about it and thinks about it. And so I don't know. I'm working really hard. What I've learned from Yael is like, I'm working really hard on not feeling bad for people who don't have families. Because like, I realize that
I'm learning that they're not pathetic.
They're not pathetic, and they're happy and have very fulfilling lives and meaningful lives. And like, I'm working like that is something that it's different for me because
you're trying not to pity them.
Exactly. I need to say it, but I'm sorry, Yael. No, I don't mean to say that like that, but it's just, my whole world is built around family and community. So it's just interesting to see people like, first of all, choose that lifestyle, not to have that. And second of all, to be happy and really like, I know I'm friends with people who are really satisfied with their lives. And I think that's good. I mean,
also the difference between you and me, ChayaLeah, I think is I know a lot more divorced people than you do probably in my community.
Oh, that's interesting too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Can you get divorced in Orthodox, or are you just?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it common?
It's not. I mean, it's definitely not as common as it is in the secular world.
With us
but
seculars.
Yeah, but it's becoming more common, and it happens. I mean, definitely there are terrible marriages, and nobody should be forced to stay in a bad marriage. But I've said this a million times to people who listen. Sorry, those who listen to our podcast, but our whole sort of outlook on marriage and relationships and family is different. It's not a fairy tale. It's not Pretty Woman, where he's gonna just sweep you off your feet and you're gonna live happily ever after and everything's gonna be perfect. Like, life is hard, marriage is hard, relationships are hard. And this whole notion of like, oh, my husband is my everything. He's my best friend and my lover and it's just bullshit. And like nobody ever tells us that. No one ever in our community says your husband's going to be everything to you. No, your husband is your partner. You're going to have kids together. You're going to raise them. You're going to build a home together. There's a lot of emphasis on like the idea of like building a home, right? And that is like what it is. Your husband does not have to be your best friend. He's not your girlfriend that you need to tell about your period cramps to because he's never going to relate. You know, like you just have to be realistic about what each of you are capable of giving the other. And I think if you can like lower the expectations a little bit and really be realistic about what you can be, I think it just is easier. And it just gives you a more sustainable model for like how marriage could work, because it's really hard.
I find too, like people who come from parents who are still together and have really good loving marriages, it's actually been harder for them because they have such high standards.
Yeah.
So my standards were pretty, like my parents, I come from divorce. So I think I underestimated my first marriage. I underestimated just what marriage was, because I just was like, it's like this thing you can do. And it really, what I learned from my first marriage is that it was more meaningful than I actually thought it was.
Yeah.
And this time around, it feels more, we were older, but we also had that instant connection, but then we broke up and then got back together, but it feels more grounded in reality.
Yeah. That's really important. It's really important. I remember the first fight I had with my husband. I'm married 22 years now. So it was like, I don't know, 22 years ago. I was crying. I called my mother and I said, I think we're getting divorced. And my mother was like, what? I mean, what do you mean? What do you mean you're getting divorced? And I was like, we had a fight. And she was like, so? I was like, well, we call my father Tati. That's like the Yiddish word. I'm like, you and Tati never fight. She was like, are you crazy? She's like, of course we fight. I'm like, I never saw you fight. Like our parents didn't fight in front of us. They didn't. There was I didn't see. I mean, I remember once in a while of little arguments, but I never saw my parents fighting. I didn't have they just didn't do it in front of us. So I literally thought my husband and I were done because we had our first fight. You know,
were they loving and affectionate, or was it just more like business partners?
So they were loving in a way, yeah, very. Like there was a lot of laughing and teasing each other, but no physical affection. We don't. It's like we're very private about physical affection in general, and so most couples don't touch in front of their kids at all. I mean, casually you can, but they wouldn't like kiss in front of. No way. I've never saw my parent. Oh my God, ew. I've never seen my parents kiss.
I think that's a universal ew.
Yeah. But like So it's but a lot of teasing and laughing. I grew up in a very happy, like fun home where everybody loved each other, but I'm very privileged in that way. If I have any privilege, it's that.
Yeah.
So after 22 years, I realized like we are modeling to our children what they could have in their lives. And I really try to think about that all the time. Like every time I am rude to my husband, you know, or mean or belittling or whatever, I'm like, I am showing my kids what is acceptable or what's not acceptable. And I have to be a role model. I mean, that's our jobs that is, in my opinion, my husband and I's most important job is to be role models for our kids. And so we really try to think about that in all of our
isn't that nice that I don't have to be a role model to anyone?
Yes, it is actually. You can do whatever the fuck you want.
And like eat like a bag of Cheetos on the couch.
Yeah.
I definitely, I kind of like snuck in under the wire and got, and it like my daughter was kind of a miracle child. And I was very zen about things. I was like, kind of just surrendered to the idea that we got married so late. I was 42 when I had her. So it was very surprising, but I also feel I have like this weird, I can't explain it. It's like survivor's guilt coming out of like modern feminism.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's wrong to want all these, all of these things. I don't, like I said, for my girlfriends, I feel like it's only a small minority of them who are like very adamantly say that they don't want a family or they don't want a relationship. I think others are just kind of, it's under something, like there's something underneath it. But like you said, I think family and the notion of family is, if it's important to you, that it can take other forms. For me, it's very important. So if it means like stepkids, or if it means like even just having a partner, and, you know, some pets, or I don't know, a close circle of friends. It is, you know, there's a lot to say for that as well.
That's true.
Are your
That is
parents
true.
still together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 And are
19
they
years.
here or are they in Israel?
My parents are in Israel.
Okay.
My whole family is there, so my sisters are there, and I have
Oh.
7 nieces and nephews there, and we're very close. We're always like chatting and WhatsApp and talking, and, you know, my sisters laugh that I'm very close to everybody because I'm not there, so I don't have to, you know, I don't have to deal with a lot of
easier.
day-to-day conflict.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, we grew up very close, and also with a large group of family friends.
Yep.
So kids that I grew up with that are kind of like cousins in addition to my other cousins. So just very communal, I guess.
Where are you in the birth order?
I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest. Okay.
The baby, yeah.
Okay. And do you get back home a lot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going next week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I try to go twice a year, sometimes once a
Yeah.
year for a longer period of time. I'm lucky that I have a job that I can sort of work from anywhere, so I can work from there. And then sometimes my family members will come here. It's, you know, when you live in New York, everybody in Israel knows about New York. They know,
Yeah.
you know, Statue of Liberty and Broadway and all these things that we saw on TV. So it's not too hard to get people to come visit.
And what have you learned from ChayaLeah in the podcast?
What have I learned from ChayaLeah?
Oh, I'm so
ChayaLeah.
curious. Yeah, what'd you learn from me?
I learned. I was trying to come up with like a smart ass joke, but an answer, but I couldn't. I mean, this is gonna sound obnoxious, but like I learned that Orthodox people are people. You know, just like us.
I love that you guys learned each other are people.
Yeah,
like the
that's
childless are people.
Yeah. Especially in Israel, there's so much conflict and tension, and you know, we kind of tend to look down our noses at them sometimes, and they're like,
why do you? Sorry, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, so you know, we don't. I mean, we don't really. Maybe sometimes at work or in the military, for those who from the Orthodox who serve in the military, we connect with people. But I would say, like, most of my secular friends don't have religious friends, and vice versa.
And why were you saying you kind of look down on and why?
Oh my God, secular Jews wish Orthodox Jews would just disappear. Let's be honest.
It's true. That's true.
Why is this?
Because, well, politically, there's just a lot of conflict over resources. There's a lot of conflict around ultra-Orthodox not serving in the military and taking up a lot of welfare. And ChayaLeah is like, I see her writing her notes to rebut them. And also there's secular Israelis are very, very defensive about the secular parts of their lives. So anytime they just opened up a light rail in Tel Aviv, and the light rail is not going to be open on the weekend, on Shabbat. And that's like a huge deal for a lot of people, because sometimes the secular people they want to make sure that everything is always like open, sometimes in a way that's offensive to Orthodox people. And then Orthodox people want everything to be religious in a way that's offensive to secular people. So there's a lot of conflict around that. And I think we see ourselves, you know, as saying we, like, you know, the average secular Israeli will see him or herself as like very modern, very European. You know, we travel abroad and we go and we eat our non-kosher, like, you know, we eat our shrimp and shop at H&M or whatever, and we kind of look at them as like more old-fashioned.
Yeah, I think that a lot of secular Jews, and this is more like also American Jews, not just Israelis, but I think a lot of liberal Jews or secular Jews are embarrassed by Orthodox Jews. It's like, we're enlightened, you know, we're assimilated. Like, that was a huge part of, you know, sort of coming to America and embracing American culture. And we, you know, you don't have to dress the way we did in Eastern Europe, and we don't have to like sound like Eastern European refugees anymore. We're now like fully integrated into American culture. Why do you have to look different? Why do you have to talk differently? Why do you have to educate your kids differently? And I think there's just a sense, and I'm sure people are going to be screaming at me while I'm saying this.
No, they're going to scream at Bridget.
Their
it's okay.
computers. No, and that's fine.
I mean,
it's fine. No, it's okay. I don't even care if they yell at me. I think there's definitely a sense of embarrassment. And the truth is that the Orthodox community, it's part of what an Orthodox community is insular, right? We're not trying to win friends and followers. I mean, although the particular Hasidic sect that I belong to is very into outreach and bringing Jews in and teaching them about our lifestyle. But most ultra-Orthodox Jews are like, okay, you don't like us. We do not give a damn. Like, it doesn't matter. We're going to dig in our heels, and this is the lifestyle that we choose, and this is a free country, and we can do whatever we want. And the more you don't like us, the more strict we're going to get, right? The more influenced by outside culture you are, we're going to get more and more and more insular and closed off from polite society.
And what do Israelis want more than anything else?
To be secular Americans.
For people to like us.
For people to like us.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a very much a sense of because Israel is so controversial and a lot of people haven't normalized it. And, there are a lot of countries that have, their passports say that they're valid for every country except Israel, which is kind of rude. So we're very much about, being accepted.
Oh, interesting. Because it seems like they don't give a shit to me.
Well, maybe that's starting to change a little bit now too, because there's a lot of people who say there's stuff that we've done and concessions that we've made in the past that have literally blown up in our face. But I feel like there's a way to walk that line between, international relations and protecting ourselves and our borders.
And who is your audience?
Our podcast?
Yeah.
Our podcast? Our mothers.
Other than your family. No, I mean, it's an interesting
ChayaLeah's family is pretty big. Yeah. We get a lot of non-Jews, which actually kind of are my favorite. People write us sometimes from Iowa, or I look at our numbers and I'm like, there can't be that many Jews in Finland that we have listeners there. But I'm also equally surprised when we get Orthodox Jews, because we do,
because they're not allowed to listen to podcasts.
Well, that too, yeah. And they're not allowed to listen to women.
They are.
Yeah.
But we do, we use foul language sometimes. Sorry to ChayaLeah's mother.
I know.
We talk a lot about the Holocaust, like we do with our guests, our non-Jewish guests. We talk about whether or not they would save us or they would hide us if there was a Holocaust.
Okay.
And, last episode we compared, I think, the Nazis today, in Orlando, and how they're less hot than the Nazis that we grew up on, and Schindler's List and, American History. So it's not for everyone, but apparently it's for a lot of people. So
it's irreverent, but I appreciate that.
It's a little irreverent. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it has to be. What's your take on your audience? ChayaLeah?
Yeah, I mean, I hear from all different kinds of people. I hear people who are super angry at things I say on there, feeling like I misrepresent their form of orthodoxy. And I always say, I'm just one person. I'm talking about my own experience and, the way I view things and the way I live my life. And I think I'm pretty honest. I try to be fair in the sense of I love this lifestyle. I choose it every day, right? I don't have to, no one's forcing me to be an Orthodox Jew. I make this choice every day, but I'm also able to call out the things that are bullshit in our community, right? And say this isn't right, or I don't appreciate that, or this is hard. And I think most people appreciate that. I think it's hard for some people to hear that, because I think a lot of Orthodox Jews are very defensive. We're constantly hit over the head about everything we do from all sides and all corners. So, when someone from the inside the community is sort of amplifying the issues, it bothers people.
Right.
They'd rather me just be a cheerleader and say how incredible it is. And there are many incredible things, and I will happily talk about those things. And I love talking about those things, but I'll also be honest in the things that are hard and parts of the community that need, to change. So I get some feedback like that, but mostly people just some people think we're really weird and stupid and don't get why anyone listens. And then some people love us and are obsessed with our episodes and, tell us how funny. And so it's really cute. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
It's really
nobody.
cute.
There's really nobody like ChayaLeah, I think, in public
What does that mean?
world.
Is that in a good
I'm
way?
trying to give you a compliment.
Oh, okay, good.
Um,
Okay, keep going.
yeah, there's nobody who talks the way you talk about like
Oh.
orthodoxy. There's not a lot of vocal women in this space, and if they are, it's usually, I mean, it's not as kind of, I don't know, open minded or very welcoming like ChayaLeah. So I think a lot of people enjoy that point of view that you just don't get to hear that much.
Yeah, a lot of women in the Orthodox world who come out and like talk about it in public, like in general society, are angry. There are a lot of women who like left the community, who've had bad experiences, who, come out and they're like, let's, all the Netflix shows and all the stuff about the Orthodox
there a show
world.
I feel like I watched?
Unorthodox. Probably,
Okay,
you probably watched Unorthodox.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like those kinds of angry, traumatized people, and their stories are really important, and I love that they share them, and they should have a voice. But you don't often hear people who like the community coming out and being like, oh, let me tell you why I love, this world that I live in that seems crazy to people. And, and I really genuinely do love it, even though it's challenging sometimes. But yeah, it's just sometimes, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what are the biggest challenges for you as somebody?
The biggest Shabbat meal for 200 people every week.
I mean, there's a lot of work involved in the way.
There's so much work. This is what my husband and I were talking about, because like I was telling you guys before we started recording, I don't know why, like ever since I worked with autistic kids when I was in my teens and 20s, they were the families I worked for were Jewish. So I went to like Jewish camps with them. I went to all their holidays because I was an aide. And so I ended up getting kind of immersed in Judaism in my late teens, early 20s. And then coming back, I don't know, I've always felt so weirdly connected. And like I get so emotional when I hear anybody, like the songs or any of the prayer.
You're halfway there. Yeah. We'll take it.
And so we got invited all the time to Shabbat when we were in LA and all of the holidays. And I joke, like my daughter's been to more Jewish holidays than any other religious holiday since she's been born. And
we do have a lot of holidays. That's true.
My husband and I both have thought about converting separately before we even met. And we talk about it all the time. And then we'll go to Shabbat and we're like, it's so much work. Like our friends are Orthodox. We're like, this just seems like so much work. It just is a lot of work.
Yeah. But I mean, I grew up in it. Yeah, keeping kosher is hard. Shabbat. I mean, Shabbat's my favorite thing. Like I would not, even if I found out I wasn't really Jewish tomorrow, like somehow it was a mistake, I would still keep Shabbat. Like
I think it's so good.
It's a miracle. It's a savior. My family, it saves my family. Like
for
25 hours. No, it's for 25 hours, our phones are away.
Yeah.
Like we don't touch it. We don't look at the computers or TVs. And like, I can't tell you what it does for me and my husband, my kids. It's just really, really good. Kosher, I would give up in a second. It is the worst part of being an Orthodox Jew, especially living in a place like I do where I don't have kosher restaurants or whatever. I have to go up to LA for, whatever I need. And if we wanted to go out to eat or whatever. So kosher's hard. I mean, as a woman, like, I cover my hair. I'm wearing a wig and I wear skirts and, whatever. So that's
I'm jealous that you wear a wig. I wish I could wear a wig.
You are?
Yeah.
Really?
Do you know how much work hair is? Yeah.
I don't know.
So this might be like a stupid question, but you have to shave your head?
No, we don't. We don't. Okay. It depends what Hasidic sect you come from. In some circles they do. But in my Hasidic sect, that's not our custom at all.
So you just have to cover your hair, even if it's with other hair.
Yeah. So like this is this is a human hair wig. They're quite expensive.
Yes.
And but I have like my real hair is just underneath it. And I wear it like up in a ponytail tucked under or whatever. But yeah, just from when we get married. We don't cover it before we're married.
Got it.
Just from,
And it's just because it's
sexual? So hair, after you're married, your hair kind of changes status and it becomes like an intimate part of your body, and only your husband is supposed to see your hair. And it becomes like one of your private parts that you just don't show. And there's like a lot of different reasons why. I mean, it says it in the Torah that when, whatever, I'm not going to get into all the details, but it comes from a source in the Torah. And then we as Hasidic, because Hasidim are a certain type of Orthodox Jew.
Okay.
And Hasidim basically are more into like the mystical teachings of the Torah and Jewish law. And so we take it very seriously. But there are Orthodox women who do not cover their hair.
Got it.
So it's not wrong not to. It's just where, like, what part of the community you come from.
Got it.
So in my circles, once you get married, the day after you get married, you start covering your hair. And I've never gone outside or, without my hair covered.
What do you do when you are
covered.
swimming?
So either I just swim with women, or I wear a bathing cap, or I wear I have like scarves and
Okay.
yeah. It's not, there's like a misconception that we cover our hair so that we're not attractive. That's not
the wigs are pretty sexy.
That's not the case. And people often say to me like, oh, it's so hypocritical, but I see Orthodox women, they look gorgeous and their wigs are stunning. And isn't that the opposite of why you're covering her? And I'm like, no, that's not why. It's our hair is literally considered to be holy and private and intimate between you and your husband. And so that's why we cover it, not so that we should look unattractive to other men or in any way like that.
Right.
So,
wow. There's so much. It's so much. There's a lot. There's a lot of details. Seems like there's a lot of rules.
Oh my God.
Every time I talk to ChayaLeah, I learn something new.
There are a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
So your whole family is secular?
Mine?
Yeah.
My whole family's secular. We didn't do any, we did holidays growing up, but meals, but we never went to synagogue, not even on holidays. We never really lit candles, although now they do it. My parents do it with the grandkids.
Okay.
On Shabbat, lit candles like for Friday night.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have a very good friend in LA, and he's a Holocaust survivor, and he always says he's like traditionally Jewish. Because when I interviewed him, I was like, "Do you believe in God?" He's like, he's like, I love the traditions of Judaism because of where he comes from, but I think being someone who lived through the Holocaust and saw what he saw, he rightfully is a little bit skeptical.
Yeah, my parents, I remember asking my parents if they believe in God, and they said no, and I asked them, then why do we do this, and why do we have the holiday meal stuff, and they're like, oh, it's tradition, and I really didn't get it, but now I totally get it. For us, it's also like Judaism is not a religion, it's a people, right? So, for us, it's just being part of a community, and that community could be people that look like me and ChayaLeah, but it could be Ethiopian Jews, or it could be, Iraqi Jews, or whatever, Canadian Jews. But we're all kind of part of very, very stubborn people who for years and years and years, like pretty much throughout every point and turn in history, were meant to be eradicated. And many of them were, and then just said, no, we're going to hold on to our faith.
Yeah.
And it's the same in the Orthodox community. I mean, God it's just a really complicated concept, even in Orthodoxy. I think people, obviously more percentage of people believe in God, but I think there's a big portion of people who are skeptical or don't know. And I mean, I know for myself, like I do these things because I'm in love with the Jewish people and the Torah and Israel. And like, that's what I'm connected to, and the family and the community. And like, God is a part of that in some way, right? And I see godliness through like the Jewish people or through humanity in a different way. And so I don't know, theology is tough. And I go through stages up and down about it. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I believe in God, and I believe in it. And he's watching every single thing I do. And then I go through stages where I'm like, God does not give a shit if I eat a cheeseburger, and not that I do, I wouldn't, because I care about the structure of the community. But like, I think to myself, why would God care if I stopped at McDonald's right now and ate lunch? I'm starving. Yeah. So it's not like just because you're Orthodox, like, oh, I believe in God and it's so easy, and it's
I feel like God just wants you not to be an asshole. Like, that's what I would think. I mean, not maybe for me. His expectations.
He doesn't want you because you are an asshole. So yeah, you're right. That's why he wants you to be less of an asshole.
No, but he knows I'm not gonna.
I'm joking.
He knows I'm not gonna start like being like keeping Shabbat. So I'm like, I think my duty as a Jew is just to try to be a good person and like give back good to the world.
God. This is like the Tikkun Olam answer for everything. Like, just be a good person. No, I think Judaism, you're right in a sense, but like Judaism is also very particular about how that should be or how it should look. And it's not that it has to be the same for everyone, but you're
starting with your particulars and then we opt out. And I'm like, you know what? Never mind. I won't be a good person. It's too much work.
It is. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. It's so, I don't know. You guys are doing a really cool thing.
You need to come.
You're healing the Jewish rift.
we're trying. We hope to profit from it.
I was laughing, Bridget. A really good friend of mine sent me your article, the piece you wrote about being a slut. What was it called?
Oh, yeah, I regret being a slut.
I regret being a slut. And I was laughing. I'm like, I'm going to write the rebuttal. I wish I was a slut because like I never had that time in my life where I was able, like we didn't socialize with boys and I got married at 20 and like I've been with one person my whole life, and I was like, I'm going to write a rebuttal of I'm going to be I
regret not being a slut.
I regret not being a slut.
A lot of people have thoughts about that piece.
It was amazing.
Even when we were at that event, Yael, that you and I were at, I got an earful about it from people who were pro-slut.
That means people are talking.
No, it was an amazing
bonkers.
Piece. I know, but you said so many important things in that piece. I work on a college campus with students, and I've shared it so many times now. And I just say, like, I give it to my students. I'm like, read this. Just look at what she's saying. Listen to what she's saying. You don't have to be in this situation. Like, you could make better choices and different choices. And it's a really important piece.
Yeah, people were saying
Pearl, and we're talking about like intimacy and stuff like that from, that she talks about a lot and how complicated it is today.
Yeah. It's so complicated. Yeah, it's a that piece. People are like, well, maybe it's just you getting older and looking back, and now that everybody feels this way once they got married and had kids. And in the video that I did where I read it, I addressed a lot of the things that people were saying to me, like the common mistakes they were making. And I'm like, I've been trying to write this piece since before I even met my husband and had a child. Right. Like these feelings were percolating. I actually would attribute it more to getting sober than anything. And a lot of it probably would have been like, I think there's a lot, you can only write so much in a piece like that, but I think so much is connected to like addiction and drinking and all of these other things. I wouldn't have made a lot of the decisions I made had I also not had substance abuse issues at a very young age. But I also think this is, this culture, like I grew up in that stupid show Sex and the City, which I freaking hated. I never watched it, but all my girlfriends were watching it and they're like, their dream was like, go to New York and drink and have brunch and like get laid all the time. And, I was doing that in a small town. You didn't need to move to Manhattan to do that. Go be an alcoholic slut.
Well, it's not a one size fits all, right? And I think like women, not just women, but I think everybody's getting mixed messages today from the culture, men and women. And I think any overcorrection is bad. So if once women were supposed to be kind of timid and prude, that was bad. But the overreaction of just like being super sex positive and go out and like use all the boys is also not good. Like just
it's so unhealthy. Medium. It's so unhealthy. It's really unhealthy.
Is this a particularly American thing, or do you guys see this kind of everywhere? Because are Europeans a little more relaxed about this stuff, or is it like this an American phenomenon of?
It feels kind of American to me. I don't know.
Vacillating between like the Madonna and the whore.
Yeah.
I don't know. Israel culture is very influenced in a lot of things by American culture. And, like I said, we watched the same TV shows growing up. And there was definitely similar experiences in terms of boys and dating and, the mean girl and the hot guy. But then, Israelis also settled down very, very quickly, too. So usually, there's a lot of pressure to get married and have babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's different though too, like on the coast from not to like make this about those coastal elites, but There is a lot. I guess, well, in my small town back east, they got married pretty young. Most of my friends got married like right out of college in the Midwest and have been married for a long time since their 20s and have older kids. I have a sister who started very young, and she jokes she feels like a grandma now. The same thing you were saying, like with all of her siblings who have started later and have younger kids. So her kids are all like, her youngest is 15.
Yeah, that's like me.
Yeah, and her oldest is 23. So she's like in a different generation almost entirely, but she's younger than me. And I feel like there was a lot of that in my small town in New England too. They started young, but then once I went to the city, like almost everybody didn't even start having kids until their mid 30s, early 30s, mid 30s. And I was reading something that the average age of a woman in like New York City, like upper West New York City or West Side Los Angeles, is first time mom is like 37.
Really?
Wow.
Which is crazy because that means there's a lot of 40 plus year olds having kids for the first time.
Yeah.
But my college students, I talk about this with them all the time. They don't want to have kids. Almost none of them want to have kids.
What's their reason for not wanting to have kids?
They're all socially awkward.
Well, they're all like,
not your college students, like college students in general. They're like socially.
The world is so messed up, and and the climate and everything is so bad.
I get
why should we bring kids into this world?
I get it.
I'm just like, and most of them, I hate to say this, and I'm sure some of them are going to listen to this, and I love you all, but I think a lot of them come from very unhappy homes. They have broken families. I hate that term, but I don't know how else to say it.
Secular kids? Are these like?
I work with. No, I don't work with any Orthodox kids. Jewish and non-Jewish, and like they don't have good modeling. Like they're not part of communities where you see like a rich life where you can, have such a beautiful future where you have kids and family and siblings and cousins and you're all hanging out together. They don't have that. They don't see it. So if you never know about it, how should you know that it's important? All they see is kind of misery, right? And it's like my mother she taught me this. She said it so many times. Like she really wanted me to live in Long Beach, right? After I got married and had kids, because that's where my parents lived. And she's like, if all I tell you is how bad it is to live in Long Beach, you'll never live here. So all I do is tell you how amazing it is here, right? And guess what? My sister and I both moved back to Long Beach because we grew up with this idealized version of what it was to live here. And I have friends whose parents were like, oh my God, Long Beach is the worst. Don't ever live here. There's no kosher food. The Jewish community is horrible. Da, da, da. And guess where they live? Not here, right? Yeah. They don't live here. And so I say this to my students. I'm like, you guys need better modeling. You don't know what could be. And if we just started talking about things differently and showing things differently, I mean, all TV is broken, everything is sad and depressing. And it's just, why should they want more? Why should they want more?
That's why my husband and I started Factory Settings, our podcast, because it's like kind of like date night for us, but we both come from broken homes and there really weren't that many models of, just happy couples. Yeah. And I'm like, we just don't have that many. It does look, and when I saw that girl's video, I thought about how I got wasted womb shamed by Ben Shapiro once, who's a friend. And online, because he talked about having the joy of something. And I was like, but the joy of a nap, very much like what this woman was saying in this video. And then he kind of was like, oh, but he, people kind of called him out. Cause I was like, are you wasted womb shaming me, Ben? Which is just a term that I made up. And
I love it.
I really should jump into this conversation on the discourse on it because I understand it. I deeply understand that stupid feeling in my 20s of well, it's the global warming or whatever. I get it. I understand it, but it's not accurate. It's not. And now having a child, I hate that I've become I'm like, everyone needs to have kids.
I know.
I will say the only
that pro-child person that I fucking hated. Sorry for the language.
No, I know.
I will say the the most feminist thing I've ever said on our podcast or ever, I think, is I will never let a man tell me that I need to have a baby, because I
That's
feel
right.
like I do hear it a lot from men, and I'm like, well, it's not the same. It's really not the same. Not in child, bearing, and not in child raising. I think the problem with the people who womb shame or whatever you call it is like, if you tell them, like, the worst thing you can
Wasted
tell
womb
them,
shame.
wasted womb shame. Womb shaming is if you've had too many kids, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But I think the worst thing I can say to them, which is the truth for me, is like, well, I just like haven't met the right person yet, because then they go into like full incel, right? And then they're just like, oh, the Chad, because you're chasing the Chads. I'm like, I wish I was into Chads. I feel like it would be like a lot easier.
They're such idiots too. Every manosphere dude out there who's like the birth rate and they're all fucking single. I'm like, go have kids then, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Get to work. Why are you
It's
all
hard
on
to-
here like on your podcast telling women they need to go get knocked up? Like, go participate in this problem.
Yeah, the reality is
Totally.
it's hard to make a connection with somebody, and with today's world where there's so much, like, women can do everything by ourselves. Like, I've never felt like I
But
needed,
it shouldn't be that way. But it
No,
shouldn't
but I'm
be
saying
that
it
way.
becomes hard. It becomes not harder, but it becomes like you really are looking for that connection, because you don't need the other things. You just need the connection.
It's true. But I think that we get so caught up. I mean, this is a step beyond what we're talking about in a way, because it's like, okay, find a partner. Fine. Step one. But you also need to find the rest of the community. You cannot raise children on your own. It is impossible. It is the loneliest thing in the world. It is. No one talks about, I mean, Matt, now you hear people saying, oh, no one talks about it. Okay. People are not honest about how lonely it is when you're sitting in your house and your baby's, napping or crying for the 10th hour in a row. And, our grandparents and great grandparents did not live like that, right? When I think about my grandmothers in the shtetl in Eastern Europe, they were making dinner together. All the women were peeling potatoes. My mother always says this also. They were all peeling potatoes around the same garbage bin, fetching about their lives. And today you're stuck in your house. You don't have anyone to talk to. No one's around. I walk on the streets here. You don't see a person except if they're homeless, and it's a very, very lonely, sad. You can't live like that.
Well, finding a community is even harder than finding a partner.
I know, but that's why I'm saying we need to address this issue from all the different angles. It's not just about the partnership of the father and the mother of children. It's also about the community around it, because it's very hard to do it alone. It's impossible.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cry right now just even talking about this, because I had to make a very impossible decision of leaving California, and my mother-in-law and my aunt, who's basically like my mom, are there, but we came to Texas where we're totally isolated, and we were like, should we just go back east where my family is? And we were just back there, and all the cousins hang out, and I am isolated here. Like,
it's hard. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
It's tough. I mean, and life is about trade-offs, right? So you get one thing that you like. Everything that makes you happy is going to be at the expense of something else. If you get married, you're not going to be single. If you stay single, you're not going to be married. And you choose to live somewhere you want to live.
This is my husband and I, like, we had to make this decision. It felt impossible, and we were like, it's all trade-offs. But then I've been like, did we make a mistake? Like,
it's very hard.
I don't know how to raise my kid in California. My husband is in therapy. Like, the rules in California around therapy change all the time for therapists, and they're insane, and they have to like affirm all this insanity. And it was like an impossible decision. And so I'm like, we need community. Like, that's been I'm like, we're saying yes to everything. We went to a ranch. We met all these amazing people. We're going to Shabbat this weekend.
Good.
I'm like, I need community. Maybe my husband doesn't, but I need it, because I feel so isolated here.
No, I'm going to tell you two things. Okay. Number one, nothing is forever. You could also decide in a year or 2 or 3, you know what? We did it our time here. We tried it. Now let's move, right? Nothing is forever. So you can't get stuck in a loop in your head that like, oh my God, what about a mistake? Okay. Number one. Number two, and I cannot stress this enough. you have to open up your home to other people as well.
Yep.
You have to invite people in.
Yep.
You have to cook a meal or bring takeout
And I
or
love
a
doing that.
caterer. Exactly.
Yep.
People are so shy to do it. Everyone acts like their home is like a moat. You know, we have to have like a moat around our home and no one should come in. If someone rings the bell, it's like the worst news I heard all day. No. Your home needs to be a place that people feel that they could come and gather and ring the bell and knock on the door and come hang out. And the only way to make that happen is if you create that yourself. And it's scary at first. I get it. It's not comfortable.
I'm totally comfortable with this.
I know, but a lot of people are
not
not. They
me
say,
who's
"Who am
uncomfortable
I?"
with this.
I know. I get it. But you have to, I'm saying it not just to you, but to other people. Don't be intimidated. Reach out. Don't think, oh, they'll think it's so weird that I'm inviting them over. Who cares? So they'll think it's weird. They'll be happy. Everybody's looking for community and friendship. Invite people over for lunch. Invite people over for Shabbat dinner, even if you don't do Shabbat.
Invite people to hang out. I had friends come over the other day, and it was kind of, we were supposed to go out, but it ended up just being like, just come here. And they came here and they sat on the couch and we ordered takeout and we watched Below Deck, and it was the best day ever.
Yeah.
Because we were just like hanging out. We didn't have to do, it wasn't like an event, you know?
Yeah.
People go on Instagram now and they think that every event has to look like something that you're putting on Instagram with hashtags. It could be nothing. You could have it from Walmart, a fruit platter, and from Trader Joe's, a bag of popcorn, and put it in a bowl, and there you have an event.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be fancy.
No, we had like the best time at this. It was so healing and also just tapping into like where I am, because so much of what I do is virtual, and I loved the farmers markets in LA, and there were just certain things about the actual place that I loved, and I was like, I know there's magic in Texas. I just have to like tap into it. And it was crazy just being like every night we had teams and we all had to make dinner. And it was like it was very amazing. It was very grounding. You know, it's just neat.
Send some Chabad people over to Bridget.
I just had people staying. I'm like extreme in this. And it's sometimes I have to pull myself back. Sometimes like I just had 5 people sleeping in my house who I don't know. They needed a place to stay for a weekend. And so they ended up coming like Thursday to Tuesday. They were here for a wedding, whatever, long story. And I was like really annoyed about it at first because, my office is also my guest room. That's why it kind of looks weird right now because I had to rearrange things, whatever. My office is my guest room. And then there were people upstairs in my kid's bedroom. And so it was all chaos. And I really hated it in the beginning. And then I was like, no. This is what it means to have an open home. That like when someone asks, you say yes, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, obviously, if I couldn't do it, I would say no. But, and it's not easy for my husband. I know he's not like me in that way. And he doesn't love being a grand central station.
Yeah.
And I sometimes have to massage it a little bit and, help him through it.
Did he grow up in a big family or no?
Oh, he's the 9th of 13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he doesn't want any people around him.
He grew up in utter chaos.
Yeah.
And like, I love my he has a great, amazing family, but it was utter chaos. And so he really likes everything a certain way now. Yeah. And he likes neatness and his space. And little did he know he was marrying me. That was, what did he know at 20? We went out 6 times. There was no way he could know he was marrying a tornado and a hurricane wrapped in one person.
Yeah.
So I have to like make sure to massage that, that also. But there's just no substitute for having a home that people feel comfortable in and feel comfortable asking to come over. And you want your kids' friends to hang out at your house. Your house should be the center. You should know all your kids' friends. You should know their name. You know what I'm saying? Like you build community. Don't sit and wait for other people to invite you in. Do it yourself. That's my one piece of advice to young people.
I love that.
I'll get off my high horse now about it. Let's talk.
I could talk to you guys forever, but we're already at like an hour and a half. So we'll all have to get together soon. I'll ask you both my question. I always end with 2 questions. What's your biggest defect of character?
Oh. Should I answer for you, Chyalah? And you can...
No.
Okay, I'll start because I've thought about this. I've like,
oh gosh,
my biggest defect is I'm a bit of a judgmental biatch. I wanted to say like critical, but I feel like critical sounds too nice. But first and foremost of myself, but also of others.
Interesting.
My biggest defect. I have so many, honestly. I would say that something I'm really, really bad at and struggling with is like I'm really bad at communication. Which is funny as someone who like has a podcast and loves talking. I'm really bad at communication.
You should see our WhatsApp group for our podcast. It's a lot of me tagging her with like exclamation points.
I have a hard time expressing what I need, what I want, what I think in like informal ways.
Right.
I'm really good at like chit chat, and I'm just not good at communication.
Like emotional.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really bad at that.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. And what's your biggest asset?
Let's answer for each other, ChayaLeah.
Okay.
Yours is that I think you're just funny as hell.
You're both hilarious.
I was going to say that about you. No, Yael's really, really funny.
Yeah, you both are. You're both hilarious.
And smart. You're really smart and really funny, and I love that.
I like you.
Oh,
I won't. I've been threatening to replace her with a different Orthodox Jew, but I think we're both very curious too. We like to learn about things and
that's
other
true.
people.
Well, this has been so fun.
Yes, thank you.
It's been a blast. I've loved getting to know both of you, and I hope people go check out your podcast. Everybody, go listen to Ask a Jew and get angry at all of us and send us emails. But where can we find you?
We are on Substack, askajew.substack.com. We also have an Instagram, Ask a Jew Pod, but really anywhere you get your podcasts. Feel free to be angry at us. Leave angry comments. That helps our engagement. So it's good for, and of course, you can send us questions. Our email is askajewpod@gmail.com. And no question is too embarrassing or too controversial.
Are you guys individually on any social media you want to blast?
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter, YaelBT. I tweet a lot about police stuff because that's my other life. Which is, slightly, I always say like there's a Venn diagram of people who hate the police and people who hate Israel, and it's like one circle. So I get it from everywhere, but if you're into that, YaelBT on Twitter or X.
And I'm an Instagram user, so if you care about what my life is about, I'm ChayaLeah, just one word, on Instagram. I do stories and put up bullshit. And you can see what my life is like. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you guys both so much for your time and for coming on and your podcast and everything you're doing and just being you.
Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you. It's time for the weekly check-in with Bridget and cousin Maggie. So I got into the morning show. I don't know when. I think I was pregnant and I was just looking for something to watch. And Jaron was never into it, but he kind of comes in and out of watching
This is the show with Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's always kind of like, it takes place kind of in the world we live in.
Okay.
So when COVID happened in the show.
Okay.
And Jennifer Aniston's character got sick. She's this kind of she's almost like a Megyn Kelly type character. She's carrying this network essentially, and they were trying to get her out because she was aged out.
Right.
And then
trying to replace her with Reese Witherspoon
kind
or
of.
something.
And then she ends up getting COVID and they launch UBA Plus. The network is UBA, and they launch Plus, and she turns the streaming network into this massive thing. And then that's where they kind of ended the season. It's strange.
It looked strange to me. That's kind of why I was
strange.
like, I don't know if I want to watch this.
But
show.
I'm weirdly, because this season, I'm only on the second episode, and it feels like they filmed it in 2020.
How many episodes how many seasons are there? Okay.
But it feels like we were watching it last night. It feels so dated. It's because they're tackling, I could almost see Reese and Jennifer being like, this season we're going to tackle the race inequality that exists. And so it's a lot of this like diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff. And there's a racist remark, and there's kind of a struggle session that one of the women on the board has to do with one of the new newscasters that they hire because she said she looked like Aunt Jemima or something like that. I mean, it is so weird. It's almost like a parody.
Okay.
I know they don't mean it to be.
Yeah.
I know they mean it to be
like seriously tackling this issue.
It feels like a parody because it's like this. Jaron was like, do they still have their black squares up on Instagram? Like, what is going on?
Okay, well, I have a question for you. Do you think it feels like that to you because you're very online and know how fast the culture has moved past this, or at least how fast kind of attitudes have changed within the culture? Or do you think this would feel dated to anyone just randomly watching?
Well, that's what I was wondering, because I just had a meeting with publishers and we were talking about, I have been obsessed with the accelerating disconnect between people who are very online and people who aren't. It seems like the more and more the actual in real life culture is dragging behind the very online. You know, there's all this conversation about the longhouse, which I'm not even going to bother explaining because of the look on your face. It will take 25 minutes.
I'm sitting here being like, no idea what that is.
And Bronze Age Pervert, who wrote a book, and exactly, you don't know who he is, which is acceptable. But online, everybody talks about this person as someone who's a figure whose ideas should be wrestled with, and
who's influencing the culture.
And he released a self-published or a print-on-demand book that was like 33 on Amazon, so it was doing well, and it's hard, but it's like, this isn't a person, any normie. I bet if I polled, I would be shocked if one other person in this development had heard of Bronze Age Pervert.
Right. And I mean, doing very well even in book sales online, that's like you sell 5,000 copies,
that's
you're doing very well.
That's what we were talking about in a country of 350 million
I know,
people.
like 5,000 copies is a runaway bestseller.
And so there is this weird self-reinforcing bubble. But yeah, I mean, if you had asked me 5 years ago how many copies of a book you had to sell to get on the New York Times bestseller list, I would have assumed it was in the millions. My first guess would have been, it's a big country.
A million.
Yeah, a million.
Uh-huh.
And it's 5,000 or something. And it has to be not bulk orders and from certain places. And it's like 5,000.
5,000. Yeah.
That's nuts.
People just don't buy books, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
But it's been like that for a long time. That's been the standard, the threshold.
So I wonder, but I could just hear Reese and Jennifer being like, I could hear them in this show. I could see them having the discussion of like, this is when we're going to tackle and we're going to confront this head on. And there's kind of, I think he's supposed to be like an Elon Musk character. And so they go up and it's like and they're also tackling Texas and making fun of Texas a lot. And a woman is smuggling abortion pills across the border but they can't cover it because the network doesn't want them to alienate, half of their viewership. And she's like, when the next election, this one character, she's like, when the next election is contested, I need all of our viewers to trust you, not just half of our viewers. And that's why we can't cover this abortion story. I mean,
it sounds like a parody.
Heavy-handed woke show. I don't know. I don't think it was always like this, and maybe it was, and I just didn't notice. But it seems like something happened to the show this year that it's like all the stuff.
It's impossible to get away from in terms of watching a show these days. Something from like, like the woke shit comes up and I roll my eyes and immediately I'm like, ugh, really?
That was like on that Brooklyn Nine-Nine when
Yeah.
they felt woke. They had to like contribute to it. I was like, you guys could just ignore this discussion because you are the police. Like the whole premise of your show is now theoretically the bad guys.
And they could have like still like their early stuff was so funny and they got away with just making fun of so much stuff. Like they could have continued to do that and still had kind of like an interesting take on what was going on in the culture.
Everyone, it's the self. That's why I saw this when I was watching this and I could hear the writers and the like smug self-righteous, I was like, oh shit, we're heading into an election year. Like everyone thinks that they need to be like, here are the hills we're dying on. It's just
I've been going through some of our older dumpster fires, like trying to, do this clip thing for TikTok, and we were talking about it, and I was like, I should really go find all of our like woke the musical clips.
We need to
because I need to like at least pull those out and see what we already had, because we actually had some really good stuff just off the cuff in Dumpster Fire, just as the idea for the musical and some song ideas. I'm like, this exists and we still need to write it.
Yeah.
Like we've got to write that thing.
But it's going to be such a weird year. It's just things are getting very strange.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my theory that people are increasingly checking out is accurate, which is why I'm seeing such a massive glaring divide between the people who are not online versus the people who are very online. There's just I don't have all of the people in this development are bitching about the pool in the Facebook HOA, as they should be, by the way. But it's not, their priorities aren't.
Their priorities are real life, what's going on.
Or like how long the line is to drop your kid off at the school. It's not like.
Right. They're not worried about whatever the Bronze Age pervert is.
I'm in this group chat and it's all these very online people, and they've been talking about the Longhouse and the Bronze Age pervert for years. And they always refer to BAP in the chat as BAP, and I'm always like, what's BAP? I've had to ask they probably think I'm a boomer. I mean, I'm like, what is BAP again? And then they're like, Bronze Age pervert. I'm like, oh, right, that's who you're talking about.
I'm
obsessively.
gonna go Google this now later, but anyway,
it's so dumb. Everything is so dumb.
Yep. And we're heading into an election year, and it's just, we have no idea what it will bring. I mean, the Trump stuff, the charges. Who was it you were talking to recently? Oh, was it Yasha, where he was like, we're in unprecedented waters in terms of like, if this man is the candidate and he's found guilty on certain of these charges, like
and he's gonna win.
It's gonna create a constitutional crisis, the likes of which we've never seen before.
Oh God. I don't know. I would be shocked if Biden made it to
the actual election.
Yeah.
I know. He's not going to be the guy. I just don't see it.
Seems like they're really priming it for
Newsom.
But I actually think Newsom could beat Trump.
He could.
Because they'll vote for anyone other than Trump.
I know.
I don't think he could beat DeSantis because he's so unpopular.
DeSantis is his own worst enemy. In terms of like likability, he seems to just be sabotaging himself.
Yeah, but I think he's just I think he's a guy who's he's like a nerd. I don't think being likable, I just think he's like a guy who reads policy and actually wants to lead. And I do get the sense that he views it more. I mean, sure, everyone wants power, but he does strike me as someone who is actually doing it out of some sense of being of service.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can't stand Newsom. He's just got the fucking
shit out of me.
Yeah, I know. He's just got the slick polish down.
That guy will say anything to get power. And he is disciplined and a sociopath. And he scares the crap out of me. And I was joking, like, the only thing that might make me vote for Trump is if Newsom runs for president. I mean, at least Trump believes his lies. Newsom just lies. Sociopathically lies. I will become an activist. I'll be like knocking on doors like AOC and be like, see my sneakers, we need to stop. We need to contain this California madness. It's like, you're from California. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm out here talking about
I fled.
What happened.
I fled in the night with my daughter strapped to my back.
I'm a refugee. I become just fully MAGA. That would make me go full MAGA, I think.
Newsom.
Oh,
Ugh.
God.
Ugh. I know it's going to happen too.
It's going to get interesting.
It's going to get ugly.
Shit's going to get weird. Strap in. Tune in next week for another riveting episode that will change your life, help you get out of your own way, and solve all the world's problems. I want to thank our composer, Jared Elias, my co-producer and cousin, Maggie, and all of you out there listening. This has been Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you're welcome. It's the dumbest line.